Okay guys, in this video we are going to talk about tables in HTML. So a table is simply a way of displaying information on a grid which has rows and columns. So we can see this simply displays some information that has been represented using a table which is arranged in rows and columns. So the columns are simply the vertical arrangements we can see. Like we can see, we have three main columns here, which are the name column, we have the country column, and we have the favorite number column. So those are the three columns we have on this table. And as for the rows, we have four rows. The first row is the row that contains the headings, and we have three other rows inside the table. So as I said, the columns are the vertical arrangements on the table, while the rows are the horizontal arrangements. And we can see in this table there are some important parts which we have to take note of. The first part is the first row of the table, which is the row that contains name, country, and favorite number. So this is the table head, which is the part that contains the first row of the table, which has the titles of each of the different columns. And under the table head, we have the next important part of the table, which is the table body, which are the rest of the columns that we see here. And as we can see, this is a simple table that shows a list of some few football players with their country and favorite number. And we are going to be using this to try to replicate this in order to understand how to work with tables in HTML. So this is the current table we have, and in the next tab, it is currently empty, and it is where we are going to be producing our own table. So I will come to my body here and I will create a table. To create a table, we use an HTML tag which is known as the table tag. I will simply write table, enter, and this table tag is simply the initial table tag which tells our HTML document that this is a table we want to create. So the next thing we are going to do after the table tag is we are going to create the table header and the table body. So to create the table head, we use a tag which is the T head tag, which stands for table head. And as I said, the head usually contains the titles of the various columns in the table. And after the table head, we have the table body, which is written as C body. Now in the head, if you can see, we go back to the initial table. I said each of these horizontal arrangement of lines is what is called a row. So everything we write inside the table needs to be in a given row. So inside the table head, I will create a row for the table head, which is going to be TR. The TR tag means table row. And inside the table row, we have to now write the titles of each of these different columns. The first column is the name column, and to write that, the title for the name column, which is simply name, I will use another tag which is th, which means table head, and enter. And inside this I will write name. Now we have to write the second column, which is going to be the country column, so I will also say t head, and inside I will say country. And for the last column, I will say t head again. Sorry, th, not t head. Th is different from t head. T head is used for the entire table head, while th is simply used for defining each of the column titles. So I will say th, and the last column title is going to be the favorite number, which has been abbreviated as fav number. Now that is it for the table head. I will go to the table body and also write or create some other columns for the values of the table body. So inside the table body is where we write these values under each of the table columns now. So inside the body, I will create the first row, which is going to be with the TR tag. And inside this first row in the body, I have to insert the details for the first football player, which is Lionel Messi, with Argentina as country and 10 as favorite number. So what I will do is, the equivalent of the th tag in the table body is going to be the td tag, because here we are not writing column titles. So I will say td. Td means table data. So here with the td tag, we are going to write the actual values that are going to be inserted under the different column titles. So for this first td tag, I have to give the value that will be inserted under the name column for the first player, and this first player has the name of Lionel Messi. So I will write Lionel Messi. Let me minimize this so that we should have enough space on our code editor. And after that, within the same row, I will also say td to give the value for the country of the first player, which is going to be Argentina. And now I will use a last cd tag for the favorite number of Lionel Messi, which is going to be the number 10. And now let's save this, and I will go back to our current working tab. This is what we have so far. We have name, country and favorite number, Lionel Messi, Argentina, and number 10. So I will simply copy this table row and paste below. I will paste it 2 times for the 2 other players of the table and simply modify the values in between the TD tags. Okay, so now I have modified, or I have completed all the table rows. I will save this, and we see we have the names updated in our browser. But if you look at our original table, we see that we have lines in between the table that separate the cells from each other and separate the rows from the columns also. But here we see there are no lines, and it is very difficult to understand the table if you don't pay enough attention even. So to include those lines to separate the table rows and columns, we go to our table, first table tag here, and we are going to add a table attribute, which is the border. I will say border equal to 1. So this border attribute is going to simply add borders to the table rows and columns, and if we don't want any borders, we simply don't include it. But if we want a border, we write border and set it equal to 1. So I will save this, and now we see that we have borders on the table rows and columns. But if we look at the initial table again, we see that here the lines are single lines, but whereas on our current table we have doubled lines because the borders are doubled. That is because for the first cell, which is the cell containing name, it has borders on all the 4 sides, and the next cell below it with the value Lionel Messi has borders on the 4 sides also. That is why it appears double here. But if you want the borders to be more like the first table we have, which are just single lines, we can come to our table tag here again and add another attribute. We are going to add a style attribute. Style, this is to give some CSS styles, but it's not going to be very complicated. So we just say style, and then we are going to write a border style, which is border collapse, border hyphen collapse. And then I can choose an option for the border collapse. These are the different options that are proposed, but I will choose the first one, which is collapse. So if you want the borders to be single borders only, we have to write border collapse equals collapse, and I will save this. Now we see we have our table resembles a lot the initial table with single border lines. Okay, now we can see the 2 tables look very identical now. So that is how to use tables in HTML to represent or display information using rows and columns.